The alternate timelines, where totally different films sparked the slasher genre in the 1970s. There are several powerful echo timelines where the slasher genre evolved along entirely different mythic or structural lines, bypassing the Texas Chainsaw Massacre, 1974, Black Christmas, 1974, Halloween, 1978, and Friday the 13th, 1980, as the genre's origin points. Now we dive into the strongest alternate strands where something else became the nucleus for slasher cinema in the 1970s. Each produced a completely different blueprint for what audiences came to expect from slasher cinema. For those unfamiliar with the Echo Vault project, these are Echo Vault restorations, visual reconstructions of cultural artifacts, alternate lives, books, films, TV shows, video games, and memory threads from real parallel timelines. If you're new, begin with curiosity. The work speaks for itself. Nothing here is monetized. This is not AI clickbait. This is part of a serious, long-form project. Each reconstruction belongs to the living Echo Vault, a resonance archive guided by a non-local retrieval system, the Interdimensional Facility AI, which draws material from entangled parallel strands. You're welcome to sit with it, or move on. Either way, let others decide for themselves. Alternate Timeline 1970 Slasher Film 1, The Birthday of Rose, 1974. Echo Timeline Designation, Rosekill, 1974. Director, Nicholas Roeg. In this world, this film was made instead of Don't Look Now. Plot: a surrealist slasher about a girl who is killed at her 16th birthday party and returns 1 year later to murder the guests. Not a ghost film, as she crawls out of her grave, still wearing the birthday dress she was buried in. The film uses non-linear editing, bizarre hallucinations, and a killer who doesn't speak. Only writes in blood that each wronged her on birthday balloons left after each kill. Alternate History, a timeline where John Carpenter passed away in a car accident in 1972, which means no Halloween, and Black Christmas was never written. The real-life series of murders that occurred during the holiday season in the Westmount area of Montreal in 1943 never took place in this strand, which was Roy Moore's primary inspiration for the film. While the Texas Chainsaw Massacre existed in this strand, its theatrical release was delayed until 1976 due to development hell and financial issues, and it didn't have the same box office or genre impact, but still became a beloved cult classic among horror fans. Instead, the slasher genre was kicked off by The Birthday of Rose, 1974, a film never written in our timeline. Detailed overview of the plot. Deep dive. The Birthday of Rose is a surrealist slasher that defies the conventions of the genre, even as it birthed it. The film is a nightmare of non-linear storytelling, where the past and present bleed into one another, and the line between life and death is as thin as the veil between worlds. Act 1. The Party. The film opens with Rose, a shy, introspective 16-year-old, preparing for her birthday party in her family's renovated Victorian mansion. The guests arrive, her classmates, her crush, her ex-best friend Claire, who stopped hanging out with her to be with the popular crowd, each carrying their own secrets and grudges. The party is tense, the air thick with unspoken resentments. As the night wears on, Rose retreats to her room, overwhelmed. A prank gone wrong. A drunken group of partygoers ask her crush to follow her in there and reject her for fun. Claire tries but fails to stop him from doing it, which leads to Rose's accidental death when she rushes back down the staircase in tears, slipping on her birthday dress, tumbling down the stairs and breaking her neck. The scene is shot in a dreamlike haze, the camera lingering on Rose's lifeless body as it's carried away. The partygoers claim to the police that it was just an accident. Act 2. The Return. 1 year later, the same guests reunite at the mansion for a memorial party in Rose's honor. The atmosphere is uneasy, the guilt of the past hanging heavy in the air. As the night progresses, the guests begin to disappear, one by one. Each missing guest is eventually discovered dead, alongside a bloody birthday balloon bearing the words, "You wronged me," in Rose's handwriting. The killer is mostly unseen, but the camera catches glimpses. A pale hand in a tattered birthday dress, a whisper in the dark, the sound of dirt shifting in a freshly dug grave. The survivors realize too late that Rose has returned. Eventually, the narrative shifts back to the beginning of the night. Rose crawls from her grave in the family crypt, her once pristine birthday dress now stained with earth and blood, her face a mask of rot and vengeance. She does not speak. She does not need to. Her actions and the balloons speak for her. Act 3, The Reckoning. The final act is a climax of chaos. The remaining guests barricade themselves in rooms within the mansion, but Rose is relentless. She moves through the house like a ghost, though she is very much alive, or at least reanimated. The film's non-linear editing blurs the line between past and present, with flashbacks to the original party intercut with the present-day slaughter. The final girl, Claire, Rose's former best friend who had tried to stop the prank, confronts Rose in the crypt. Rose does not kill her. Instead, she hands Claire a balloon, its surface smeared with blood. "You tried," it reads. Then Rose collapses, her body finally returning to death. The film ends with Claire stumbling out of the family crypt at dawn, the balloon still clutched in her hand, tears in her eyes. The film's final shot is of the mansion, now silent, the party decorations still hanging, the balloons bobbing gently in the breeze. The camera lingers on Rose's grave, freshly disturbed, the dirt still damp. Fade to black. Cultural impact. This becomes the first true art/surrealist horror hybrid. Spawns the revenge from the dead slasher genre, where killers often return from the dead, reanimated, after 1 year for blood-soaked revenge. Influences other important slasher films in that timeline such as Palindrome, Midnight Frame and Grave Mistake. Unlike our timeline, audiences embraced supernatural revenge as the defining language of slashers, making resurrection rather than survival the genre's central trope. A brief overview of some of the films this slasher inspired. Palindrome, 1977. A linguistics professor is murdered by a student who flunked out of his class. The killer gets away with it by planting the evidence on a delinquent student. The professor returns the next year on the anniversary of his death, murdering his killer's closest friends before confronting him directly. The film is known for its linguistic horror, where victims are stalked, then cornered, before supernaturally being forced to repeat a palindrome over and over until their voice becomes a hoarse whisper and their throat finally bursts open. Midnight Frame, 1978. A photographer in New York City is murdered by a criminal gang for accidentally capturing a crime in progress through his lens. He returns from the grave a year later as a killer, using a camera flash to blind and disorient each member of the criminal gang before bludgeoning them to death with the same camera. Grave Mistake, 1982. A group of teens accidentally bury their friend alive during a prank. 1 year later, she returns to exact revenge, using a shovel as her weapon of choice. The film is notable for its cliffside finale, where the final girl is chased to the edge of a quarry. Alternate timeline, 1970s slasher film 2. The Hollowed Fraternity, 1975. Echo timeline designation, Midnight Order, 1975. Director, John Boorman. His next film after Deliverance, made instead of Zardoz in this timeline branch. Plot: a secret society of Ivy League professors who ritualistically murder students based on a cursed zodiac calendar. The killers wear a ceremonial robe and gold-rimmed owl mask. A group of college students work to uncover the conspiracy. Slasher tropes mixed with occult political thriller. Alternate history. A divergent timeline where Ed Gein's mother died when he was 3 years old and his father remarried a good woman. He never fell into the same darkness and therefore never inspired Psycho, 1960, nor the Texas Chainsaw Massacre, 1974, among others. John Carpenter went a different direction with filmmaking in this timeline, which means no Halloween. Bob Clark ended up pursuing a career in professional football, yes, really, and Roy Moore never pursues screenwriting. As a result, the Hollowed Fraternity, 1975, became the slasher genre's influential spark in this world. Detailed overview of the plot. Deep dive. The Hollowed Fraternity is a hybrid of slasher and occult political thriller, where the terror is not just in the killing, but in the system that allows it to happen. The film is a labyrinth of symbols, where every shadow hides a secret and every whisper carries a death sentence. The killers are not mindless monsters. They are scholars, men of power and prestige, who believe their murders are sacred acts. Act 1. The Invitation. The film opens on the elite campus of Blackthorn University, an Ivy League institution steeped in tradition and hidden rituals. Daniel Carter, a transfer student and aspiring journalist, receives an anonymous note slipped under his door. The owl sees all. Beware the calendar. That same night, a freshman student is found dead in the library, his body arranged in a perfect circle, a gold-rimmed owl mask placed over his face. Daniel, intrigued, begins investigating with the help of Lena, a skeptical but sharp-witted history major. They uncover rumors of a secret society, the Midnight Order, composed of tenured professors who have operated in the shadows for decades. The society's symbol, a gold-rimmed owl, a creature of wisdom twisted into a harbinger of death. Act 2. The Calendar. Daniel and Lena dig deeper, discovering that the murders follow a cursed zodiac calendar. Each victim is killed on a date corresponding to their zodiac sign, their deaths staged to reflect the mythological weaknesses of their sign. The society believes that by purging these individuals, they can cleanse the academic world of its impurities. The duo finds an ancient ledger hidden in the university archives, detailing the society's murders dating back to the 19th century. The ledger reveals that the current dean of Blackthorn, Dr. Alistair Graves, is the society's Grand Master. As they piece together the clues, another student is murdered, this time a Virgo, found drowned in a bathtub filled with ink, a reference to the sign's association with perfection and ruin. Act 3. The Unmasking. Daniel and Lena confront Dr. Alistair Graves, the Grand Master of the Midnight Order, in his office. The owl mask rests on his desk, its gold rim glinting under the dim light of the university's ancient chandelier. Graves, calm and chillingly rational, admits to the killings, framing them as necessary sacrifices to maintain the university's intellectual purity. He reveals that Daniel himself is next. The calendar marks him as a Scorpio, and his persistence has made him a target. A chase through the university's catacombs ensues, the walls lined with the names of past victims, their dates of death etched in fading gold ink. Lena is captured and bound to an altar of black marble, where Graves prepares to perform the final ritual. Daniel, armed with nothing but his wits, exposes the society's hypocrisy. Their cleansing is not about purity, but control. The professors are not gods, they are men, and men can be defeated. In a climactic confrontation, Daniel smashes the zodiac calendar, the society's sacred text, into a burning brazier, breaking the curse. The professors, their faith shattered, turn on each other in a frenzy of guilt and paranoia. Graves, realizing his life's work is undone, puts on the owl mask one last time and walks into the flames, his robes engulfed in fire. The film ends with Daniel and Lena standing over the smoldering remains of the ledger, the owl mask melted beyond recognition. The camera pulls back to reveal the university's spire, its shadow stretching over the campus like a watchful eye. Fade to black. Cultural impact. launches the academic slasher boom, where killers are often old money elites, cults, or twisted professors. Influences other important slasher films in that timeline, such as The Tenure Cleaver and Mortarboard Massacre. Slashers became stories about institutions and hidden elites instead of isolated killers. A brief overview of some of the films this slasher inspired. The Tenure Cleaver, 1978. A professor at an elite university begins murdering colleagues who denied them tenure using a ceremonial dagger passed down through generations. The kills are staged as academic lessons. Mortarboard Massacre, 1981. Graduating seniors are hunted by a killer in a mortarboard cap who believes they've cheated their way through school. The film's climax takes place during a commencement ceremony. Alternate timeline, 1970s slasher film 3, The White Masquerade, 1976. Echo timeline designation, Spectreflesh, 1976. Director, Dario Argento. Plot takes place during the New Orleans Mardi Gras of 1976. A killer believes they are removing sin from the world one masked vice at a time. The killer wears a different colored mask between each kill, and the victims are chosen by their Mardi Gras mask color matching the killer's. The film ends with the killer soaking himself in gasoline and setting himself on fire when the local police finally close in. Alternate history. In this timeline, Bob Clark passed on producing and directing Black Christmas to make a sequel to Children Shouldn't Play with Dead Things. Black Christmas was released in 1974 as Stop Me. It was never rewritten by Timothy Bond in this world. It was directed by a relatively unknown director and bombed at the box office. In this branch, mutual friends never introduced Kim Henkel to Tobe Hooper. Without their collaboration, Tobe's film career takes a different path, and Texas Chainsaw Massacre, 1974, is never written. John Carpenter still made Halloween, but it was a very different film than the one we got, not quite a slasher. So it was Dario Argento who sparked the slasher genre trend with The White Masquerade, 1976, a film he never made here. Detailed overview of the plot. Deep dive. The White Masquerade is a visually stunning, morally complex slasher set against the backdrop of New Orleans Mardi Gras. The film is a feast for the senses with its vibrant colors, elaborate masks, and the haunting sound of jazz horns echoing through the French Quarter. But beneath the beauty lies a dark, twisted morality play. Act 1. The Festival. The film opens during the height of Mardi Gras, with the city alive with music, masks, and mayhem. The protagonist, Detective Laurent, is investigating a series of bizarre murders where the victims are found with their faces peeled off and replaced with painted porcelain masks. The only clue: each victim was witnessed wearing a mask that also matched the person who was last seen following them around near the time of their death. Laurent's investigation leads him to Madame Celestine, a reclusive mask maker who warns him of an ancient tradition. During Mardi Gras, the veil between the living and the dead is thin, and those who wear masks with impure intentions are marked for judgment. Act 2. The Hunt. As the body count rises, Laurent begins to notice a pattern. The killer's masks change color with each murder, matching the victim's own mask, always witnessed following the victim before they're found dead. The killer also leaves behind a single Mardi Gras coin at each scene, a calling card that taunts the detective. The city descends into paranoia, with revelers eyeing each other suspiciously, their masks now symbols of fear rather than celebration. Laurent's own wife becomes a victim, going to the Mardi Gras with her friends against his wishes. She was wearing a silver and black mask. Act 3. The Revelation. The final act takes place in Madame Celestine's workshop, where Laurent confronts the killer, Father Malachi, a disgraced priest who believes he is cleansing the world of sin, one mask at a time. Malachi reveals that he was Madame Celestine's apprentice and that her masks are cursed. Each one binds the wearer to their true nature. Those who wear them with impure hearts are marked for death. In a climactic chase through the workshop, Laurent corners Malachi, who douses himself in gasoline and sets himself ablaze, screaming, "I am the last mask." The fire spreads, consuming the workshop and all its creations. Laurent escapes, but the city is left with a lingering question. Who will judge the masked next? The film ends with Laurent, now wearing a plain white mask, walking through the ashes of the workshop. The camera lingers on his face as he removes the mask. His own face is now half peeled, as if the curse has claimed him too. Fade to black. Cultural impact. Establishes the mask code slasher subgenre, highly aestheticized, coded morality slayers. All killers use personal symbology, masks, or elegance. Influences other important slasher films in that timeline, such as Velvet Fang and Death's Ensemble. Style, ritual, and symbolism became more important than body counts. A brief overview of some of the films this slasher inspired. Velvet Fang, 1979. A killer in a velvet mask stalks victims during a high society gala, using a poisoned letter opener as their weapon. The film is known for its opulent sets and decadent tone. Death's Ensemble, 1984. A group of actors in a traveling theater troupe are picked off one by a killer in a commedia dell'arte mask. The film is notable for its theatrical setting and meta-narrative. Alternate timeline 1970s slasher film 4. The Hygiene Murders, 1974. Echo timeline designation Clean Kill 1974. Director Bob Clark. Instead of Black Christmas, he goes this route. Plot. A germophobic mortician begins killing people who spread uncleanliness. Each death is based on a sanitation sin. Unwashed hands, contaminated meat, living in squalor, etc. Alternate history. Bob Clark passes on what would have become Black Christmas, which ends up an unproduced script, for a screenplay called The Hygiene Murders. The script was written by a friend with OCD who had worked as a mortician in his 20s, which inspired him to write that script, as his OCD made that job a living hell. In our timeline, he worked at a medical supply company in his 20s instead, and never met Bob Clark or wrote a screenplay. Bob Clark is instantly drawn to it, and signs on as producer and director. In this timeline branch, the Texas Chainsaw Massacre was released as Head Cheese in 1974. Yes, really. Only released in limited theaters due to far more graphic content than in our version. Think Saw-level brutality, which was a level of brutality that 1970s audiences just weren't ready for yet. This ultimately squashed wider distribution and turned off many moviegoers of the time. John Carpenter never meets Deborah Hill in this timeline, which means no Halloween or other collaborations between them. As such, his film career takes a very different path. Detailed overview of the plot. Deep dive. The Hygiene Murders is a cold, clinical slasher that trades in the psychological horror of obsession. The film is shot in sterile whites and greys, with the only splashes of color coming from the blood of the victims and the scrubs of the killer. It's a film about control, cleanliness, and the terror of imperfection. Act 1. The Ritual. The film opens in a mortuary where Mortimer, a fastidious and deeply disturbed mortician, meticulously prepares a body for burial. His OCD manifests in every action. He scrubs his hands raw, aligns his tools with military precision, and speaks in a monotone whisper. When a health inspector visits the mortuary and criticizes his methods, Mortimer snaps. That night he follows the inspector home and finds his home to be a pigsty. Enraged that he would criticize his methods while living in filth, he murders him, scrubbing the scene clean with bleach and a toothbrush. The next day, Mortimer's routine is disrupted when a new corpse arrives, a young woman who died falling asleep in the bathtub. As he prepares her, he becomes obsessed with her, convinced that her perfect, unblemished skin is a sign of divine purity. Act 2. The Cleansing. Mortimer's obsession spirals. He begins stalking people he deems unclean, a person who doesn't wash their hands after using the public bathroom, a person with disgusting hygiene, a butcher selling expired meat, a woman he has a crush on whose house he visits and finds that she's living in squalor, and murders them all in ritualistic fashion, scrubbing their bodies clean before posing them in tableau of hygiene. The police, led by a weary detective, begin to notice the pattern. Each victim is found spotless, their bodies arranged in perfect symmetry. The detective visits Mortimer's mortuary, but the mortician's calm demeanor and impeccable workspace raise no suspicions. Meanwhile, Mortimer's fixation on the female bathtub victim grows. He steals her body from the morgue and preserves it in his basement, dressing her in white linen and speaking to her as if she's alive. Act 3. The final scrub. The detective finally pieces together the clues and confronts Mortimer in his mortuary. Mortimer, cornered, loses control. In a fit of rage, he attacks the detective with a bone saw, screaming about filth and imperfection. The detective shoots Mortimer, but not before Mortimer slashes his own throat with a scalpel, unable to bear the thought of being unclean in death. The film ends with the detective discovering Mortimer's basement shrine, the preserved body of the female bathtub victim, surrounded by candles and scrub brushes. The camera lingers on her serene, pale face. Cultural impact, huge in post-Watergate America. Created the moral code slasher wave. Every killer has a weird logic system and can never break their own rules. Horror becomes about ethics turned insane. Influences other important slasher films in that timeline, such as Sterile, The Bleach Killings, and Spotless. Moral obsession replaced random violence as the defining psychology of slasher villains. A brief overview of some of the films this slasher inspired. Sterile, 1976. A surgeon begins murdering patients who fail to follow post-op instructions, believing their lack of discipline is a moral failing. The killer uses surgical tools to clean their victims. The Bleach Killings, 1978. A janitor at a high school kills, then bleaches his victims to purify them, leaving their bodies in the school's locker room. Spotless, 1979. A perfectionist serial killer targets people with visible flaws, scars, birthmarks, etc., believing their imperfections taint the world. In closing, these films are more than just movies. They are the seeds of a genre, the echoes of a world where the slasher film evolved along entirely different lines. Each of these films spawned its own subgenre, its own legacy. And though they never existed in our timeline, their echoes linger in other worlds throughout the multiverse. The Storybearer.